AITA for no longer acting like a husband after my wife publicly demoted me. I'm Noah, 38, and by the time this all blew up, Alyssa and I had been married for 9 years. We still had the same chipped blue mug we used to fight over every morning, the same shared calendar full of reminders, and the same anniversary restaurant we kept going back to because it made us feel like we were still trying. I loved my wife for a long time. I just didn't realize I had slowly become the only person in the marriage still applying for the job. Alyssa wasn't always cruel. That's the part people miss when they hear stories like this and immediately ask why someone stayed. She was funny in a sharp way, organized without being boring, and confident enough to make ordinary nights feel like something was happening. In the early years, she could turn a grocery run into a date just by grabbing my hand in the cereal aisle and making some ridiculous comment under her breath. She remembered little things. She wrote notes on receipts. She made our place feel alive. I'm not pretending I was a perfect husband who did everything right. I could be too quiet when I was upset. I had a bad habit of thinking through a problem for so long that by the time I spoke, it sounded like I had already judged her. Alyssa used to say, "You go into your courtroom voice," and I understood what she meant. I tried to work on that. I tried to ask instead of assume. I tried to be softer. But over time, her confidence changed. Or maybe the marriage changed around it. What used to feel like certainty started feeling like a grading system. Dinner plans became tests. Conversations became auditions. If I asked whether she still wanted to go somewhere we had already planned, she would stare at me like I was a needy kid tugging at her sleeve. One Friday, I had made a reservation because she had complained for weeks that we never did anything just for us anymore. I left early enough to get home, shower, and put on the shirt she liked. 10 minutes before we were supposed to leave, she texted from the other room. "Not feeling it tonight. Need peace." I walked down the hall and found her sitting on the bed scrolling on her phone, still in sweatpants. "You said you wanted this," I said. "And now I need space," she replied without looking up. "Why does that make you panic?" "I'm not panicking. I'm disappointed. Same thing with you lately." That became the pattern. She canceled plans, then blamed me for reacting to the cancellation. She ignored texts, then said my follow-up was pressure. If I tried to bring something up at breakfast, she would say, "I don't have the capacity for this before work." If I waited until evening, she would say, "I'm not spending my night managing your feelings." If I asked when we could talk, she would say, "Can I have one thing that isn't scheduled by you?" Eventually, I started asking for less. That sounds peaceful from the outside. It wasn't. It was like living in a house where every floorboard might creak, so you learned to step only where you thought you were allowed. Alyssa had this phrase she picked up somewhere, protecting my peace. At first, I respected it. Everyone deserves room to breathe. But in our marriage, it started meaning she could disappear emotionally for days and call it a boundary. She wouldn't say good morning. She'd answer direct questions with "fine" or "whatever you think." She'd make dinner for herself and leave the pan in the sink, not because I expected her to feed me, but because she wanted me to see she had considered me and chosen not to include me. If I asked, "Are we okay?" she'd say, "You're making it unsafe to have space." I believed that for too long. I suggested counseling 3 different times. The first time, I sent her a link to a counselor's website and said I'd found someone with evening appointments. She didn't reply, but the next morning I saw the shared calendar invite marked as declined. When I brought it up, she said, "Therapy is for couples who can't communicate." "That's kind of why I'm asking," I said. "No," she said, putting the blue mug in the sink hard enough that coffee splashed on the counter. "You're asking because you want someone to tell me I'm wrong." The second time, I said we could each pick someone and compare. She said she wasn't interested in paying a stranger to validate my insecurity. The third time, she laughed. Not loudly, not dramatically, just a little breath through her nose while she looked at her phone. That laugh hurt more than yelling would have. Around then, Brooke became a bigger presence in our marriage than any friend should be. Brooke was Alyssa's best friend. They had been close for years, and in the beginning, I liked her. She was loud, sarcastic, and the kind of person who could walk into a room and act like she owned the couch. But once things got strained between Alyssa and me, Brooke developed opinions about everything I did. At brunches, she'd say things like, "Some men don't understand consequences until access is revoked." I'd look at Alyssa, waiting for her to shut it down. She wouldn't. One time, Brooke made a joke about husbands needing training, and Alyssa smiled into her drink. Training? I asked. Brooke shrugged. Men understand consequences, not conversations. She said it like she was giving marriage advice instead of describing a dog obedience class. I told my sister Rachel later. Rachel didn't laugh. Rachel is 33, my younger sister, and one of the few people who never let me dress up something ugly just because I was afraid of looking bitter. She had watched me shrink myself for years. Not all at once. A little at a time. You sound exhausted, she said during one call. I'm trying not to make her the villain. You don't have to make her anything, Rachel said. Just stop making yourself the floor. I didn't listen right away. Instead, I compensated. I planned more dates. I handled more errands. I picked up groceries when Alyssa forgot. I sent her little reminders in the shared calendar because she liked having things organized. I paid for weekend plans she later canceled. I kept receipts and Venmo notes because we had always been careful with money, but I didn't look at them as evidence back then. They were just pieces of a life I was trying to keep functional. I thought if I made life easier, she would stop treating me like I was difficult. That was my mistake. I kept lowering the volume of my needs, and somehow she still called me too loud. By the time our 9th anniversary came around, things were bad enough that I probably should have known better than to expect anything warm. But anniversaries do something weird to you. They make you remember who you used to be together. I booked our usual restaurant. I put down a deposit for a weekend getaway 2 weeks later, nothing extravagant, just a place where phones could stay on silent, and maybe we could talk without the kitchen sink between us. I bought a simple gift too, a small bracelet she had mentioned months earlier and probably forgotten she wanted. I wrapped it myself. Badly. I used too much tape, because I always use too much tape, and for 1 second while I was folding the paper, I remembered Alyssa laughing at me years ago and saying I wrapped gifts like I was trying to keep evidence secure. I let myself hope. Then, the morning of our anniversary, Alyssa said, I invited a few people tonight. I was standing at the counter making coffee. The chipped blue mug was already in front of her, because even when we were barely speaking, I still made hers first. A few people? I asked. Just Brooke, Jordan, and some of the group. It should be a celebration of growth. I thought it was going to be just us. That's the problem, she said. You always think everything is about what you expected. I looked at her for a second, waiting for the part where she admitted she had changed plans without asking me. It didn't come. What kind of growth are we celebrating? I asked. She picked up her mug. Hopefully yours. That should have been enough for me to cancel. It wasn't. Again, I told myself maybe she was nervous. Maybe having people there would keep us from fighting. Maybe dinner could still be a reset, even if it wasn't the one I planned. That evening, I showered, got dressed, and put the wrapped gift in my jacket pocket. Alyssa wore a black dress I had always liked. She looked beautiful and untouchable. While she was putting on earrings, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was reaching for my keys. The screen lit up with a text preview from Brooke. Tonight is perfect. Embarrass him a little, then ask for the money after he gets desperate. I froze. It wasn't one of those vague messages you can explain away if you squint hard enough. It was a sentence with a plan inside it. Alyssa came around the corner faster than normal, saw me looking at the counter, and snatched the phone up. You ready? She asked. I looked at her hand. Her knuckles were tight around the phone. Yeah, I said. I'm ready. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask for the phone. I didn't accuse her of anything. Maybe part of me still wanted to be wrong. Maybe part of me wanted to see how far she would go if I didn't stop her, to see what she was truly capable of. At the restaurant, the table was already half full when we arrived. Jordan was there with his wife. A few other friends had pushed 2 tables together, and Brooke had saved the seat closest to Alyssa like a bridesmaid guarding the bride. There were water glasses sweating onto paper coasters, menus stacked at odd angles, and that weird anniversary energy where everyone seemed to know they were supposed to be cheerful, but nobody knew how intimate the night was allowed to be. Brooke hugged Alyssa first, then gave me a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. 9 years, she said. Wow, that's commitment. Usually the idea, I said. Jordan leaned over as I sat down. You good? Just listening tonight, I said. He gave me a look, like he could tell something was off, but he didn't push. For the first 20 minutes, dinner was normal enough to be cruel. People talked about plans, pets, bills, shows they were watching. Alyssa laughed too brightly. Brooke kept touching her arm like they were sharing a joke nobody else had earned. I sat there with the gift still in my jacket pocket, feeling the hard little box press against my ribs every time I shifted. Then Brooke started. You know what I respect? She said after the appetizers came. Women who know their value. Alyssa smiled down at her plate. Here we go, Jordan muttered, not loud enough to stop it. Brooke lifted her glass. No, seriously. Too many women spend years giving husband benefits to men who act like basic effort is some kind of heroic achievement. A couple of people laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was easier than admitting the table had shifted. I looked at Alyssa. Is this supposed to be part of the celebration of growth? She took a sip of wine. Don't be sensitive, Noah. Brooke tilted her head at me. Some men don't understand access until it's revoked. Access to what exactly? I asked. She smirked. If you know, you know. I could feel the preview text buzzing in my memory. Embarrass him a little. Jordan cleared his throat and tried to change the subject. So, did anyone actually try that new dessert place? Alyssa cut in. No, I think this is important. The table went quieter. A server walked by with a tray of drinks, and I remember focusing on the ice cubes in the glasses because it gave me something to look at besides my wife. A husband has to earn his place, Alyssa said. Her voice was calm, polished, like she had practiced it. That includes my attention, my warmth, my energy, all of it. My chest went cold. I said, you really want to have this conversation in front of everyone? Alyssa smiled. If you're embarrassed, maybe ask yourself why. Brooke actually clapped. 2 quick little claps, like Alyssa had landed a point in a debate. A friend across the table suddenly became fascinated with the menu. Jordan looked down. His wife pressed her lips together. Nobody stopped it. Then Alyssa said it. Don't expect affection from me until you earn your place again. The sentence hung over the table. I didn't yell. I didn't beg. I didn't ask what I had done wrong. Something in me detached so cleanly it scared me. I set my glass down. Fair, I said. Then don't expect husband treatment from someone you just demoted. Brooke's smile twitched. Wow, there it is. His ego. No, I said. My limit. Alyssa's face tightened, but she kept her voice sweet. You're proving exactly why I had to say it out loud. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized she wasn't hurt. She wasn't trying to repair anything. She was performing a correction. She wanted me embarrassed enough to become manageable. I pulled out my wallet and put cash on the table for my meal and tip. Then I took my phone out and canceled the weekend getaway reservation right there. The confirmation email came through before anyone found something useful to say. Partial refund. Not full. I didn't care. Alyssa saw the screen. What are you doing? Matching the marriage you just described. You're being dramatic. No, I said, standing up. I'm done funding the performance. The chair legs scraped the floor louder than I expected. The whole table flinched. As I walked out, I remembered the gift in my pocket. I took it out before I reached the door, looked at the awful tape job, and almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because that little box felt like proof of how badly I had misread the night. I didn't throw it away. I just put it back in my pocket and walked into the parking lot. Alyssa followed me before I reached the car. Noah, she hissed. Stop. I turned around. The restaurant door closed behind her, muffling the table noise. You made me look awful, she said. You handled that before I stood up. So you're punishing me? No, I said. I'm believing you. Her eyes narrowed. You don't get to twist my boundaries into some excuse to act cold. You're allowed to have boundaries, Alyssa. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to need space. You're not allowed to invite an audience and use them to teach me my place. She folded her arms. This is why I don't feel emotionally safe with you. That line used to make me stop. It used to make me soften immediately because nobody wants to be the person making their spouse feel unsafe. That night, it landed differently. You planned this, I said. Her face changed for half a second. Not enough for anyone else to notice. Maybe, but I had been married to her for 9 years. I planned an anniversary dinner, she said. Sure. I got in the car and closed the door. I didn't drive home right away. I sat in the parking lot with my hands on the steering wheel and called Rachel. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, happy anniversary, I guess. I laughed once, and it came out wrong. Noah. I told her exactly what happened. I repeated Alyssa's words. Brooke's clapping. The text preview. My reply. The cancellation. I expected Rachel to explode. Instead, she got very quiet. Then she said, Write down exactly what was said before they make you doubt it. I'm not imagining this, right? One person can't be the whole marriage, she said. And a marriage can survive hard seasons. It can't survive one person training the other to accept humiliation. I sat there staring through the windshield at the restaurant lights. I think I'm done auditioning, I said. Good, Rachel said. Now be smart. Do not send a speech. Do not leave a voicemail. Do not give Brooke some dramatic clip to pass around. Write it down. Go home calmly. Get your documents. And tomorrow, talk to someone who knows what a clean separation looks like. Rachel has always been better than me at saying hard things plainly. I opened the Notes app on my phone and wrote everything while it was still fresh. Names, times, exact wording as close as I could remember, the text preview, the cancellation confirmation, the cash I left on the table. I got home before Alyssa. The house looked normal in a way that felt insulting. Her shoes by the door, the throw blanket folded over the couch, the blue mug in the sink, the shared calendar notification on the counter screen still reminding us of anniversary dinner, 7 o'clock. I went to the bedroom, changed out of my dinner clothes, and took a duffel from the closet. I didn't pack like someone leaving in a movie. I didn't sweep clothes off hangers or throw drawers open. I took my passport, birth certificate, old tax records, bank statements, spare keys, the title documents we kept together, and a few sentimental things from my side of the closet. My grandfather's watch, a folder of old photos, some letters from Rachel and my parents. Then I changed the sheets in the guest room. When Alyssa came in, I was putting a pillowcase on. She stood in the doorway. You can't be serious. I am. You're sleeping in here because I set a boundary? I'm sleeping in here because you told a table of our friends I haven't earned the role of husband. You're being dramatic. No, I said. I'm making the house match the marriage you described. She stared at the duffel. What's in the bag? My documents. Her face sharpened. Why? Because I'm done being unprepared. That was the first time she looked genuinely worried. Not sad. Not sorry. Worried. She backed away from the door and started typing on her phone. I didn't ask who she was texting. I had a guess. 20 minutes later, the couple's group chat started lighting up. Alyssa, I'm sorry everyone had to see that tonight. I said I wouldn't be emotionally controlled anymore, and Noah left. Brooke, he proved your point. Someone reacted with a sad emoji. Another friend wrote, hope you guys are okay. Brooke, honestly, some men can't handle a woman having standards. I watched the messages come in from the guest bed. Typing bubbles appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Jordan didn't say anything at first. Alyssa sent another message. Alyssa, I tried to be honest about needing affection to feel earned, not demanded. He turned it into money and punishment. I almost replied. I had my thumb over the keyboard. Then I heard Rachel's voice in my head. Do not give them a speech. So I locked the phone and put it face down. The next morning, I woke up after maybe 3 hours of sleep. My back hurt from the guest mattress. My mouth tasted like I had been chewing cotton. Alyssa was in the kitchen making coffee for herself. Not in the blue mug. She had left that one dirty in the sink. I need you to approve the transfer today, she said. No good morning. No apology. No, can we talk about last night? What transfer? I asked, though I already had a sinking feeling. The one I mentioned last week. She had not mentioned a specific transfer. She had floated an idea about helping cover a large expense connected to a lifestyle project she wanted to do with Brooke, something she had framed as investing in my happiness. It wasn't a bill. It wasn't a necessity. It was a big, optional expense that would have come out of the joint account and leaned heavily on money I had been trying to keep stable. I'm not approving that, I said. Her eyes flashed. Of course. After last night, joint money is for documented shared obligations. Mortgage autopay, utilities, insurance, groceries we both use. Nothing else until we have a written agreement. You are using money to punish me. No, I said. I'm not financing a marriage you publicly demoted me from. She slammed a cabinet shut. You're controlling. Then write down exactly what you're asking for and why. We can send it to a mediator. The word mediator changed the temperature in the room. She laughed, but it was too quick. You're ridiculous. Maybe. I poured coffee into the blue mug, rinsed it first, and took it to the guest room. That day, I opened a separate account for my income after speaking with a professional. I did not drain our joint account. I did not hide money. I did not cancel essential payments. I kept shared obligations documented and transparent. I made a spreadsheet with dates, amounts, and notes. It was boring. It was also the first peaceful thing I had done in months. I contacted a family mediator first because I still wasn't sure whether I wanted a legal separation or a divorce. I didn't want revenge in that moment. I wanted clarity. The mediator sent back a consultation email with basic reminders. Do not drain shared accounts. Keep shared bills documented. Communicate in writing where possible, and avoid emotional threats. The sentence that stuck with me was, boundaries are strongest when they are clean. Clean became my rule. I printed the counseling calendar invites Alyssa had declined. I saved screenshots of texts where she said things like, I'm withholding warmth until you learn not to pressure me, and maybe a trial separation would teach you not to take me for granted. I saved Venmo and Zelle notes for expenses she later claimed were things I forced her into. I saved the getaway cancellation confirmation and the partial refund. I saved my own notes from the parking lot. I wasn't building a shrine to my resentment. I was building a record. 2 days after the dinner, Brooke gave me the peace I didn't even know I needed. The group chat had been quieter, but not dead. Alyssa kept making vague comments about feeling unsafe. Brooke kept liking them immediately. Then, at 10:42 p.m., Brooke sent a screenshot into the couple's chat. It was only there for maybe 10 seconds. I saw my name. I saw Alyssa's name. I saw the words embarrass him and money. I took a screenshot so fast I barely remember doing it. Then Brooke deleted it. Brooke, ignore that. Wrong thread. My heart was pounding. I opened my screenshot and read what she had posted. It was a slice of her conversation with Alyssa from before the dinner. Brooke, tonight is perfect. Embarrass him a little, then ask for the money after he gets desperate. Alyssa, he'll hate looking like the bad husband in front of everyone. Brooke, exactly. Make it about standards, not money. He'll fold. Alyssa, he always folds once he thinks I'm pulling away. I read it 3 times. There are moments when evidence doesn't surprise you. It just removes the last place denial could hide. Brooke texted me privately a minute later. Brooke, that wasn't meant for you. I typed, obviously, then deleted it. She sent another message. Brooke, don't blow this up. It was just venting. I didn't answer. Alyssa came to the guest room door not long after. She didn't knock. Did you save that? She asked. I looked up from my laptop. Yes. Her jaw tightened. That was private. So was our marriage. You're going to ruin me over one stupid conversation? No. I'm going to stop letting you call it a boundary when it was a setup. She stepped inside. You don't understand how lonely I've been. There it was. The pivot. I closed the laptop slowly. Then you should have gone to counseling with me. I didn't want to sit in a room and be blamed. You wanted a restaurant table for that. She flinched like I had raised my voice. I hadn't. For the next week, Alyssa tried every version of the story. To some people, I was controlling. To others, I was cold. To Brooke, I was fragile and punishing her for supporting a friend. In the group chat, Alyssa wrote long, polished messages about standards, emotional safety, and not letting marriage become entitlement. I stayed mostly silent. That made people uncomfortable. Silence always does when people expect to fight. Jordan finally texted me privately. Jordan, I thought you walked out over one comment. Is there context I'm missing? I stared at that message for a while. Jordan had looked down at dinner. He hadn't defended me, but he also hadn't laughed. He had tried to change the subject. I could be angry about what he didn't do and still recognize he was giving me a door now. I replied, yes. I'm putting it together cleanly. I'm not asking you to pick a side. I'm asking you not to repeat anything until you've seen the full context. He wrote back, fair. That was more than most people gave me. Alyssa escalated the next morning. Alyssa, Noah is refusing to approve shared expenses now because I finally set a boundary. Brooke, financial punishment. Classic. Friend, what expenses? Alyssa, I'm not going to list private things. The point is control. Brooke, he's blowing up a marriage because his pride got bruised. Jordan, Noah, is there context here? I had already prepared the timeline. Not a rant. Not every text. Not every sad little receipt from 9 years of trying. Just enough. My hands were steady when I typed. Noah, you all heard the punchline. Now read the setup. Then I sent a PDF I had made from screenshots and notes. It was simple. Dates. Messages. Labels. The declined counseling calendar invites. Text from Alyssa saying, I'm withholding warmth until you learn. A screenshot from Brooke months earlier. Train him with silence. He reacts when he's scared of losing access. The anniversary dinner notes written in my car 15 minutes after I left. The getaway deposit and cancellation confirmation. The screenshot Brooke accidentally sent, including the part about embarrassing me and asking for the money after I got desperate. The mediator consultation email showing I had not drained accounts and had asked how to handle shared obligations correctly. I added one message after the file. Noah, I'm not asking anyone to pick a side. I'm asking you to stop repeating a lie. Alyssa was allowed to say no to affection. She was not allowed to stage a public humiliation to pressure me into approving money afterward. The group chat went quiet. Typing bubbles appeared under Brooke's name. Disappeared. Alyssa typed for almost a minute. Stopped. Typed again. Jordan responded first. Jordan, Alyssa, is any of this fake? No answer. Brooke, this should have stayed private. I typed back before I could overthink it. Noah, it stopped being private when you made it dinner entertainment. Jordan, Brooke, that screenshot does not look like support. It looks planned. Brooke, I was supporting my friend. Jordan, supporting her doing what? Alyssa finally replied. Alyssa, I can't believe you'd humiliate me like this. There it was. Not I'm sorry. Not, I shouldn't have done that. Not even, I was wrong but hurt. Just outraged that the audience had changed seats. I wrote one last message. Noah, you used an audience to punish me. I used receipts to end the performance. Then I muted the chat. The fallout wasn't explosive in some movie way. Nobody threw wine. Nobody made a public post confessing everything. Real consequences are usually quieter and more humiliating. Two friends messaged me privately that night. One said, I'm sorry. I laughed because I was uncomfortable. That was cowardly. Another wrote, I knew the dinner felt wrong, but I didn't know it was planned. Jordan sent the longest apology. Jordan, I thought you walked out because you couldn't take criticism. I should have asked more before assuming. I'm sorry. I appreciated that. I didn't need him to become my spokesman. I just needed one person in that group to say the obvious out loud. Brooke left the group chat for 6 hours, then came back and sent a message about toxic male ego weaponizing screenshots. Nobody reacted. That silence probably hurt her more than an argument would have. Alyssa's big expense didn't happen. She tried to pay for part of it herself, then realized the numbers didn't work without the joint money she had expected me to release. She accused me of sabotaging her growth. I told her, in writing, that joint funds would continue covering documented shared obligations and nothing else without mutual agreement. She sent back, You're making me ask permission like a child. I replied, I'm asking for written agreement before large non-essential spending from shared funds. That applies to both of us. She didn't answer that one. The house became a strange place after that. We moved around each other like roommates who knew too much. I stayed in the guest room. I bought my own groceries and labeled nothing because I refused to become petty over yogurt. I paid my share of the mortgage auto pay and utilities from the joint account and logged it. I stopped covering the image-based things Alyssa had gotten used to me paying for without discussion. Dinners with people she invited without asking me. Deposits for plans she could cancel. Reimbursement later. Expenses that somehow never got reimbursed. She noticed immediately. You've changed, she said one night, standing in the kitchen while I washed a pan. I stopped guessing what I'm allowed to expect. No, you got cold. I turned off the water. Alyssa, I have been trying to talk to you for a year. You mean control me? I mean talk. She leaned against the counter. She looked tired. For a moment, I saw the woman I had loved. Not the performer from the restaurant. Not Brooke's echo. Just Alyssa, exhausted and scared of losing control of a story she thought she owned. I was lonely, she said. I believe you. That seemed to surprise her. I was, she repeated softer. I believe you, I said again. But lonely people can go to counseling. They can ask for a separation. They can say no. They can leave. They don't have to train their spouse with silence or embarrass them into paying for something. She looked away. After the group chat reveal, Alyssa agreed to one counseling session. I think she expected the counselor to scold me for exposing private messages. Maybe she expected the word boundaries to carry the whole conversation for her. We sat on opposite ends of a couch in a neutral office with tissues on the table between us. The counselor asked what brought us in. Alyssa went first. I don't feel safe being vulnerable with him anymore, she said. He showed private messages to our friends. He canceled an anniversary trip without discussing it. He's using money and distance as punishment because I said I didn't owe him affection. The counselor looked at me. I said, she doesn't owe me affection. She never did. The problem is that she used affection as a public ranking system and planned with her friend to embarrass me, so I'd approve a large expense afterward. Alyssa's face tightened. You keep saying planned, like I'm some villain. I took out the printed timeline and put it on the table. The counselor read quietly. Alyssa stared at the wall. After a few minutes, the counselor asked, Alyssa, what do you believe Noah should have done after seeing this message? Alyssa crossed her arms. Talk to me privately. I tried, I said. You didn't try the right way. The counselor asked, what would the right way have been? Alyssa didn't answer directly. She talked about tone, timing, pressure, my lack of warmth, how she felt judged. Some of it was probably true. I'm sure there were times I came across colder than I meant to. I'm sure there were conversations where I could have been gentler. But every road led away from the restaurant, away from the plan, away from the money. Then she said, how am I supposed to trust you after you showed them our messages? I looked at her for a long second. How was I supposed to trust you after you planned to shame me into paying for something? She cried then, quietly. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired. The session ended with the counselor suggesting individual counseling and a structured separation period if we couldn't communicate without leverage. Alyssa said she would think about it. In the parking lot, she told me the counselor was biased because I had brought props. Receipts, I said. Same thing. That was when I knew the marriage wasn't just damaged. It was done. I moved forward with a legal separation process through the mediator and then an attorney when it became clear we needed firmer boundaries. Nothing happened overnight. There were forms, account statements, awkward emails, and a lot of waiting. We had to decide how shared bills would be handled. We had to separate autopay from optional spending. We had to document who paid what and when. It was not dramatic. It was not satisfying every day. Some days it was just annoying and expensive. Alyssa kept trying to pull me into emotional arguments. One message said, I hope you're proud of yourself for breaking us. I replied, please send financial questions through the mediator. Another said, I can't believe 9 years means nothing to you. I replied, I will respond to separation logistics in writing. She sent, you punished me because I said no. That one I did answer, because I was tired of that lie wearing therapy language like a costume. I wrote, you were always allowed to say no. You weren't allowed to use it as a leash. She didn't respond for 2 days. Brooke sent me a half apology about a month later. Brooke, I never meant for this to become a whole thing. Dinner got out of hand. I was supporting my friend. That was the closest she came to admitting the thing existed. I showed Rachel the message. She said, silence can be an answer. So I gave Brooke silence. The friend group changed after that. I didn't demand loyalty tests from anyone. I didn't ask people to cut Alyssa off. I didn't need a parade. Some people faded because they were embarrassed. Some stayed polite but distant. Jordan and I got coffee once and talked like adults. He said, I keep thinking about that dinner. Me too. I should have said something. Yeah, I said. He nodded. Fair. I respected that more than a dramatic apology. He didn't try to make his guilt my responsibility. He just owned it. Alyssa struggled with the separation more than I expected. Not because she suddenly understood what she had done, at least not at first. She struggled because separation was supposed to be her threat. It was the word she used when she wanted me to move closer, try harder, pay faster, apologize first. She had said, maybe we need space so many times that I think she forgot space could become an address on paperwork. When the mediator's email laid out temporary financial arrangements, she called me 3 times. I didn't answer. She texted, you can't just make this official because you're mad. I replied, the process is official because the situation is official. She wrote back, you're so cold. Maybe I was by then. Or maybe I had finally stopped bleeding warmth into someone who called the wound a boundary. The first morning after Alyssa moved out for the separation period, I made coffee in the chipped blue mug. Just 1 cup. For myself. I stood at the counter longer than necessary. The house was quiet in a way I didn't recognize. There was no phone buzzing face down beside her plate. No sigh from the hallway telling me I had breathed wrong. No shared calendar reminder telling me to keep chasing a conversation she had already declined. I expected to feel free immediately. I didn't. I felt sad. 9 years is not a jacket you shrug off. It's dishes, receipts, holiday photos, inside jokes, furniture dents, bad habits, favorite snacks, and the exact amount of creamer someone uses even when you can barely stand each other. But underneath the sadness was something steadier. Relief. The legal separation moved forward. We agreed, through the mediator, on temporary handling of shared obligations. The joint account became a narrow tool instead of a foggy pool of resentment. Mortgage autopay, utilities, insurance. Documented. Nothing extra. The anniversary trip was long gone, with only the partial refund sitting in my separate account, like a small receipt from the night I stopped pretending. Alyssa attended one individual counseling appointment, according to something she mentioned in mediation, then stopped. She said it was too expensive and too focused on accountability language. I didn't comment. Months later, during one of the last mediated conversations about finances, she tried a softer approach. I made one mistake at dinner, she said. We were on a video call with the mediator. Alyssa looked smaller on the screen than she ever had at the restaurant. I said, the dinner wasn't one mistake. Her eyes filled with irritation first, then tears. You're really going to keep punishing me for saying no? I leaned back in my chair. I was tired of being careful with the truth just because she found it heavy. You were always allowed to say no, I said. You weren't allowed to turn our marriage into a stage and expect me to clap. The mediator looked down at her notes. Alyssa wiped her cheek and said nothing. That was the last direct emotional conversation we had. The separation became the shape of the ending. Not because I wanted to win. There wasn't a trophy. I lost money. I lost friends. I lost the version of my marriage I had been carrying around in my head long after it stopped existing in the room. But I kept my dignity. I kept the record clean. I kept my hands steady when people wanted a scene. And eventually, I stopped checking whether Alyssa had posted something vague about healing or betrayal. I stopped wondering if Brooke had convinced herself she was still the hero of some empowerment story. I stopped trying to predict whether mutual friends believed me enough. The point was never to make everyone hate Alyssa. The point was to stop letting her define my refusal to be humiliated as cruelty. On what would have been a normal Saturday in our old routine, I found the wrapped bracelet in the back of a drawer. The paper was dented. The tape looked just as ridiculous as it had that night. I opened it, not because I wanted to give it to her, but because leaving it wrapped felt like preserving a hope that had already expired. The bracelet was pretty, simple, exactly her style. I put it back in the box, unwrapped, and set it aside to sell or donate later. Then I made coffee in the blue mug and drank it at the kitchen counter without checking the shared calendar. Alyssa once said I had to earn my place as her husband. I decided the place wasn't worth applying for anymore. I didn't punish her for saying no. I left because she turned our marriage into a stage and expected me to clap. If you like the stories, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.